With God's help and through the prayers of the Holy Fathers, Holy Sophia Prayer House presents a video prepared on an Orthodox Christian topic. Thank you for your attention, and we wish you a spiritually beneficial and fruitful viewing. Even if you fast for 40 days twice, the battle will not end until you humble yourself. From the notes of the nun Nikanti. Continued. Gabriel, having landed on the shore of Tatsminda, near the Gregorian monastery, entered the monastery. This was in 1825. The abbot did not want to receive him, let alone even see him. Gabriel revealed all his sorrow to the small brotherhood of the monastery. The brothers asked the abbot to accept the young man, and he agreed. Gabriel was assigned to the kitchen. At the beginning of Gabriel's life in the Gregorian monastery, as he himself told us, on the feast of Saint Nicholas, they were unable to catch fish for the feast due to bad weather. Suddenly, on the evening before the feast, the waves of the sea threw several large fish into the vicinity of the monastery, and the brothers gathered the miraculously given nobat, which was completely enough for the feast. After Gabriel's departure from Constantinople, his uncle also converted to Christianity and went into hiding. He changed into a beggar's garment, went to Smyrna, and took refuge in a church, where he served as a watchman and a lamplighter. After 8 years of penitential life, he died peacefully on the glorious day of Christ's resurrection. Gabriel lived in Gregoriat for a short time. He heard that in the Kavso-Kalevi skete there was his compatriot, a highly experienced monk, the monk Neophyte Karamandes, who served in the cell of St. George. And so he decided to go to him and humbly ask for his acceptance. Bearded Neophyte accepted him because at that time the entire holy mountain had been conquered by the Turks due to the Greek uprising. At that time a large part of the nuns had left Athos and few people lived in Skitsky. Father Neophyte often secluded himself in the cave of the Venerable Nephantes, and even now he wanted not to violate the decrees of the Patriarch and the Fathers, which forbade the admission of young men and beardless men into the brotherhood. But Gabriel also had to be protected from the barbarian Turks, so he settled him in a cave next to the cave of the Venerable Nephantes. Here he labored, hidden from everyone, for about 4 years. When peacetime came, Berdidius and Father Neophyte bought a cell in Caricia named after the Holy Apostles. They lived there for 3 or 4 years. At that time, Berdidius had a vision and decided to adopt and establish a perfect fast typicon for himself and his disciples, never, for any reason, to eat cheese, eggs, milk, fish, oil, or wine. Berdidius sent all the food they had to the Lavra. Then, for 400 leva, he bought another cell, named after the holy great martyr Demetrius. Here he entered Gabriel in the schema under the name of George. Although Father George is listed in the cell's homology instead of Berdidius, as long as Berdidius himself was alive, he was considered the patron and leader. According to the laws of his homeland, Father George was not allowed to study or speak Greek and knew only Turkish. Bearded Neophyte himself had already learned Greek on Mount Athos. For the same reason, for a long time, he could not speak to anyone except his teacher, which is why he was forced to remain silent all the time. For several years, Father Neophyte forbade him from entering the temple. He could only stand at the gate and listen to the divine service from there. The pious and naive Father George was convinced that Bearded served with the angels, and therefore did not let him inside. For 18 years, at the behest of Bearded, Father George climbed the winter peak every day, except during the harsh winter months, and lit candles in front of the icons at the Transfiguration of the Lord. Once, Father Georgie was seized by a terrible carnal passion and began to fast to overcome it. He neither ate nor drank for 12 days and nights, but the battle continued. Father Georgie decided to fast for 40 days and heard a voice. Even if you fast for 40 days twice, the battle will not pass until you humble yourself. At that time, he was contradicting Berdidius about something. Father Georgie immediately went to Berdidius, knelt down and said, "Father, forgive me." When he blessed him and laid his hand on his head, the battle passed. Once, tempted by the devil, Haji Georgie left Bearded. Then the devils began to appear to him, and in the form of angels they seemed to ascend and descend in front of him to heaven. although Haji Georgi noticed a rapidity in their movement. They forced him to worship them and promised to give him the grace of the Holy Spirit, but when Haji Georgi called on the prayer of his birded for help, all this disappeared. Another time, when Father Georgi was still living with birded, the devil appeared to him in the form of a young man riding a mule and invited him to his place. He promised that his comrades would make him their birded and that he would live well with them. But Haji Georgi understood the devil's charm and saw that the devil, along with the mule, ascended into heaven and disappeared. Once, Father Georgi had a burning and irresistible desire to be a martyr. For 60 days, he prayed to God while standing, leaning on his staff for a short break. After 60 days of prayer, he went to the great birded, Hilarion the Georgian, to ask for prayer and advice on martyrdom. Father Hilarion told him, "I have not yet received authority from the church to give advice on such matters." But Haji Georgi, with tears in his eyes, begged for a solution to the matter, whether his intention was virtuous or not for God. Finally, Father Hilarion said, "If you want to receive an answer, then go to Birded Eye, Father Benedict the Georgian. You will go to his cell, to such and such a place. You will see a knot of rope hanging down. Pull it 3 times and Birded Eye will come out. He will think that I have come. Fall at his feet, tell him your business, ask for guidance, and do whatever he tells you, for this is what is good for God and beneficial for you." Haji George did the same, and when Father Benedict came out, he received his blessing, then told him about his desire to become a martyr, for which he had been praying standing for 60 days. Father Benedict understood that Father Hilarion had sent him to him, and, before answering Father George's question, he began to reproach himself. "Look, you, Benedict, how many years have you lived here, but you do not have such a feat. And this novice is better than you. When did you become so vigilant that you could stand in prayer for so long like him? Or do you fast as this servant of God fasts?" When he said this, he was not so much reproaching himself as he was referring to Haji George, so that he would not trust this feat and dream that he was doing something great. Birded Eye understood that neither excessive fasting nor prolonged prayer would bring him any good if it were not combined with humility and love. Haji Georgi took these words as a rebuke and tearfully asked Birded to decide for him how to act, because without the advice of an experienced father, he would not be able to rise to such a task. Father Benedict replied, "Even if I tell you, you still will not believe me and will try to fulfill your desire. Although you can go to the nation for martyrdom, you will not receive the crown of perfect martyrdom, and you will have to endure a lot. True martyrdom will come to you later, from the young brothers gathered around you on Mount Athos." Father Benedict later recounted in detail what he had said. Haji George went to a Turkish city, and in order to provoke the Turks against him, he began to gather boys and teach them the doctrine of Christ, forcing them to depict the cross. The Turks immediately attacked him. He was severely beaten and thrown out of the city. After many unsuccessful attempts to have the enraged Turks behead him, he was forced to return to Mount Athos, beaten and mutilated. Thus spoke Father Benedict, and many years later, he recounted the second. He had to endure much from his brothers. From the notes of Father Panteleimon, around 1870, Panteleimon visited Haji George several times. He writes, "Birded Haji George lives in Karasia, in the great and ancient cell of the holy great martyr Demetrius, and has about 30 disciples, Greeks and Russians. He is known throughout Athos and by pilgrims on Athos, especially those who climb the peak of Athos, because it is from his cell that the ascent begins. Those returning from the peak often stop by him, which is why everyone knows his holy Abrahamic hospitality. Whoever comes, he is given free accommodation and does not regret it. Birded also has mules and is very helpful to his highly respected Russian colleagues." Haji built a large mill, which cost him a lot of money and caused him a lot of trouble, but he did a lot of good to the people around him. They have a small apiary and their own kayak, which they use to transport goods from different places for themselves and others to the landing place. They never have enough food and are often in debt, but the Lord seems to reward them invisibly for their love of others. His disciples are real angels. Birded leads them very strictly and harshly on the path of salvation. They are mostly young people, and he, for their benefit and to hide them from the eyes of the unscrupulous men who come to them, orders them to smear dirt on their faces and make them look like black people. Lavra learned about this and ordered them to be punished for this strange act, even if Burdett had good intentions. To the dismay of the men of the order, none of them wear long hair, even though they are all ordained in the schema. There are excellent people among the disciples, but the priest nun Mina is simply a man of pure living. He has the same obedience to Burdett as the novices. At every work and in the evening, when they go to bed, everyone receives a blessing from the teacher and silently disperses to their cells. Anyone who does not know Haji George himself cannot distinguish him not only from his disciples, who are always dirty and disheveled, but even from an ordinary worker. He behaves so simply and easily. Their cells are never cleaned, nor are fleas and lice removed, which is why someone who is very tired wants to sleep in their cells. They do not take oil, wine, fish, cheese, or eggs at all, and are content with the meager food. Their labor is astonishingly great. I was very pleased with one of Burdett's laws, not only when everyone works together, or several people, but even when two people work, in order to avoid speechlessness, one of them must recite the Jesus prayer aloud. Article author, Kakabur Kenkashvili. The source S translated by docs.google.com. Apologues for any errors. Haga Sofa Chapel. May God bless you. Thank you for your attention. You have watched a video presented by Holy Sophia Prayer House. Please subscribe to the channel so that it may become more successful and its work may serve good and beneficial purposes even more effectively. May God help and bless you.